Hey there, gorgeous. It's Kyra here at the Moon Manifesting Podcast. Thanks for joining me today. Before I dive into today's episode, which is all about what to do if a launch fails, I would love to invite you, if you are an entrepreneur, a soulpreneur, a mompreneur, business owner, or maybe this is your aspiration, if you're interested in starting or growing your business, enrollments have now opened for the Soul Aligned Business Mastermind. We're starting on the 26th of September 2022, and it's a 6-month journey of growing your business in alignment with your soul's purpose. We're going to cover everything from defining who you are, what it is that you're meant to be doing in this lifetime, how to attract your soulmate clients, soulful marketing, every element that you need to start or grow your business. So if this is something that you would love to participate in, if you're really feeling the call to get support with your business, the link to enroll in the Soul Aligned Biz Mastermind is in the show notes below. Cannot wait to welcome you in there. So, what to do if a launch fails. And launching is something else that we do cover in the Soul Aligned Biz Mastermind. So last week on the Moon Manifesting Podcast in episode 78, I was chatting all about tips to make your launch a success. And so I was talking about things like looking at the astrological timing, not launching during Mercury retrograde, and other tips to fuel your success. So if you have recently launched something, make sure you head back to episode 78 and check out all my tips there to make your launch an absolute success. However, if you're on the other side of your launch now, cart is closed, it's all over, and you haven't met your goal, that's what we're going to be talking about in this episode. So, what to do if your launch fails? The first thing I want to talk about is defining failure. So this is a big thing for me personally, because when I set goals for myself, I have these really high expectations of myself, kind of unrealistic most of the time. And so for me, I always felt like I was failing. Because I would never meet my unrealistic expectations. So as I've kind of been in business for quite some time now, for about 13 years as an entrepreneur, I'm beginning to redefine what exactly failure means to me. And so, this whole episode is filled with all that wisdom from my over a decade of entrepreneur experience through multiple businesses about, what to do when you think you're failing. Because sometimes you can write things off as a failure, but in reality, you've actually made, huge progress. So step 1, define failure. Define what it means to fail. A lot of this time, it comes down to a numbers game. You didn't get the sales that you wanted. You didn't bring in the money that you wanted. Maybe you had a target with a number of clients or the number of products sold or something like that. It's a numbers game. So often we set this number for ourselves. And if we don't hit that number during our launch, then we think, oh, we failed. And true story, this happens to me all the time because, like I said, I set these really high goals for myself. So if that's something that really resonates with you, consider as you're setting goals for your launch, and if you're not setting a goal for your launch, then definitely do it. But if you're not meeting those goals, maybe you need to change those goals a bit so they are a bit more realistic. Look at your historical data from previous launches, even if it's from different offerings, you can still kind of get an idea of how well this launch will go, because you can see what your kind of energetic capacity is for bringing in certain money or numbers of clients that you can energetically handle, all that sort of thing. So redefine what failure means to you. Really important step, because like I said, a lot of the times we think we failed, but we're not. So moving on to my next point. So once you've redefined failure, maybe you can look at reframing this failed launch as some sort of practice. So if you haven't already heard my background, my entrepreneur experience, I started off when I was 19. I started off running my own business. I was making modern cloth nappies, sewing them myself, like I designed the pattern myself. I was sewing them. I was going to markets and selling them. I was selling them online. And I did not make a lot of money doing this. I was like really cutting even because my pricing wasn't great. I was like, really just selling my nappies to cover the costs of my fabrics. But I learned so much in the years that I ran that business. I learned how to set up at a market, how to set up a market stall. Like I learned all about presentation, that's the word I'm looking for. I learned so many valuable business skills. I met so many people doing that work. And even though, a lot of us who I met back then, we're, doing different things now, it was such a valuable experience for me at the time. So I could absolutely write off that business as a complete failure because at the end of the day, I didn't really make any profit from it. But I'm choosing to reframe it. This was my practice business. The skills that I learnt with my Bubbalooba nappies, they've been so valuable for my future businesses. And a lot of the skills I learnt then, I'm actually still using now, even though my business is completely different. You learn things along the way, and those skills can become handy for later on down the track. So previous launches, like if they've failed, or even if this launch has failed for you, is there some way that you can reframe that as a practice? Are there things that you have learnt from this that may be valuable later on down the track? So my next tip for what to do if your launch fails is repurpose the content. If you have already made something and now you have no use for it because you actually haven't sold it, is there some way that you can repurpose that content? If you made like some sort of digital product or tangible product, is there some way that you can still use that? So there's been times when I've made online courses and it didn't really sell, or it didn't sell as well as I had hoped. I was able to repurpose that content. I was able to launch that course again and again and, reuse that content for multiple launches. Each launch I kind of changed things a bit or added on different components such as like a live group or, live lessons. But there's always some way that you can repurpose or recycle that content that you've created for something that has, kind of failed or hasn't worked out as planned. It hasn't gone to waste. So if you're left with an entire 8-week course that you've created and no one's bought it or something like that, is there some other way that you can use it or repurpose it? So my next point, and it's probably one of the most important, and if you've been listening to my podcast, then you'll hear me say this all the time, keep your vibe high. Oh my gosh, I cannot tell you how many times I've had a so-called failed launch and I have felt so awful. Like it sent me into a spiral of depression because it's no one loves me. No one wants to buy my stuff. Like all that sort of negativity can really bring your vibe down and make you feel awful, not only about your business and your launch, but also about you as a person. And so now if I have a so-called failed launch, I try my best to keep my vibe high. So this may be things like saying affirmations, specific to the launch that I've had, something about more sales are coming my way, or I attract soulmate clients every day, or, something like that. It'll be customized to you. But affirmations are super powerful. Keep your vibe high by, just staying really positive. Like the things I've already explained in this podcast episode, like reframing what this launch has meant for you. Like, maybe you can reframe it as a practice, or just redefining what failure means. All these things can help keep your vibe high, because it's all about seeing the positive of, a potentially negative situation. So how can you stay positive even if you haven't met your sales target, or you haven't got the number of clients you wanted, or whatever it is that's made you feel like you've failed? How can you keep your vibe high regardless? So the next point on my list is kind of related to that. It's about not letting your launch define your worth. So like I just said, like at times when I've had failed launches and it's like really had an impact on me, it can really make you feel like, you're pretty worthless, like the emotions I was expressing before, like, nobody loves me because nobody bought my stuff. And, it's simply not true. Like, of course, like, my kids love me, my husband loves me, my mum loves me, my friends love me. They don't even necessarily know that I have failed a launch. But for me, sometimes it can feel like the end of the world, and it's like, oh my God, why do I bother? Like all that sort of, those feelings. Let me know if you relate to this. If you're listening to this and you're like, oh my God, that's so me. Let me know, because it's a horrible place to feel, like when you've really poured your heart and soul into something that you've then shared with the world, and you're like so convinced that this is the work I'm meant to be doing. And then there's just crickets. No one buys it. And it's like, oh my God, I just put everything into this and nobody wants it. So don't let that failure define your worth. Remember that this is just one little thing in the whole scheme of your life. Not everything is going to depend on one little launch. Launches, often we can launch things and they're not going to go to plan. So don't let your launch define your worth. If it fails, shrug it off, dust yourself off, and keep going. Relaunch it in the future, or move on to your next idea, or just keep focusing on the actual things that are bringing in money in your business. Because a lot of the time, right, it's about money. We really tend to tie our self-worth to how much money we're bringing in. And so if we're not bringing in the money, if we've launched something and it hasn't had those sales that we wanted, and maybe we wanted those sales because there was something that we really had to pay for, and then that's failed, and so we're kind of left here in this financial discomfort. It can really bring us down. So my last point to help you, if your launch has so-called failed, analyze what worked and what didn't work. Often, we learn so much when we're launching something. So like I said before, reframe this whole experience as a practice. There may have been things that you learned how to do. Maybe you learned how to write out an email sequence to send out to your email list as a way of, leading the people on your email list into your program or whatever it is that you're selling. There's things that we often learn during that process of launching. So yeah, you can absolutely go back and analyze what worked and what didn't work, and learn from that to see what elements you could include in future launches and maybe what to leave out next time. For example, in the past, I've tried lots of different methods when launching. I've tried webinars. I've tried live challenges as part of a launch. I've made an e-course as an opt-in thing. I have made little printable PDF freebies, as part of my launch. I've tried lots and lots of different things as part of launches, Facebook ads, so many different things. And if you don't try these things, you're not going to know what's going to work for you and your business or what's not going to work. And, along the way, as you're doing these things, you learn things along the way, and there might be just little tweaks that you can do next time. So regardless of whether your launch failed or not, it's so valuable to just analyze those different components of your launch and, checking in, like, maybe one aspect really worked and you had like a lot of engagement and that actually brought in some sales. Or, maybe there was this other thing that you did and it was just not, it gained no traction. So absolutely use this launch as a learning tool to help you succeed in future launches. So I hope that this episode has been really helpful for you, whether you have just launched something and it hasn't gone to plan, or whether you're in the process of launching something and you're just looking for some extra tips. I hope that this has been super helpful. And don't forget that the Soul Line Biz Mastermind is open for enrollments. So if you do want my guidance with your next launch, I'm totally here for you. This is something that we do cover in the mastermind, and I'm there to give you specific advice for your product, your service, your offering, to help you make this the most successful launch that you've ever had. So if you do want to join me for the Soul Line Biz Mastermind, or you're just curious for more details, be sure to click that link in the show notes. You'll find all the details there. So thank you so much for tuning into the Moon Manifesting podcast today, and I look forward to chatting to you all next week. Bye.